Hi everyone, and welcome to All This Science, the science podcast that describes an interesting aspect of science in 5 minutes or less. My name is April, and I'm your guest speaker hoping to bake your day a little better with today's episode about chocolate chip cookies. Ever wonder how you can start out with a bowl full of sticky dough and end up with a perfectly chewy, warm, delicious cookie? Some people say that that's just the way the cookie crumbles, but I say it's chemistry. Every chocolate chip cookie starts with an awesome recipe: butter, sugar, eggs, vanilla, flour, baking soda, salt, and of course, chocolate chips. All of these ingredients play a crucial role in the mad science that goes on in your oven. My personal favorite recipe is Best Chocolate Chip Cookies, found on allrecipes.com. A pro tip: when looking for a recipe online, make sure to read the reviews to see what others thought and if any changes needed to be made. Now let's get baking. The first chemical reaction that takes place when you put your cookies in the oven is the melting of the butter. This causes your cookie to spread out into the disc shape that everyone recognizes. Butter acts as an emulsion, a substance with two or more ingredients, in this case fat and water, that don't want to stay together. As the butter melts, the trapped water heats up and expands into steam, causing your cookie to expand too. The next reaction that takes place is the changing of proteins in the cookies. These proteins mostly come from the eggs. At different temperatures, these coiled up proteins unravel and overlap with their neighbors. This gives your cookie substance and stability. This is important because it supports the bubbles in the cookies that are formed from the decomposition of baking soda into water and carbon dioxide. The salt in the cookies slows down the decomposition reaction so the bubbles don't get too big. These bubbles give the cookie its light, crispy texture. The final reaction that takes place is the breakdown of sugar, or sucrose, into simple sugars called glucose and fructose. This gives the cookies their shiny light brown crust. After this final step, you will be able to smell the nutty, caramelized aromas coming from your oven, and that's when you know they are done. Now all you need is a nice glass of milk to go with your cookie, a batch made in heaven. Now, everyone likes their chocolate chip cookies a little bit different. By altering the ingredients slightly and changing the oven setting or cook time, you can achieve your ideal chocolate chip cookie. For super soft cookies, use half white sugar and half brown sugar. Use shortening in place of butter, and lower your oven temperature to 325 degrees. For cakey cookies, add more flour to the recipe and use baking powder instead of baking soda. If you like thin, crispy cookies, use only white sugar, add a little bit less flour, and melt your butter. If you're like me and you like your cookies to be extra chewy, use more brown sugar than white sugar and add an extra yolk to your dough. If your cookies aren't turning out the way you want them to, there are a few common mistakes you might be making. If you find that your cookies are flattening out like petals on the cookie sheet, that could be due to your butter being too warm, over-greasing your cookie sheet, or using too much baking soda. Maybe you are experiencing the opposite and your cookies aren't spreading out at all. This might be from your butter being too cold or your oven not being hot enough. Everyone's ovens are a little bit different, but a good rule of thumb is to let your oven preheat for at least 10 minutes. Have you ever taken your cookies out of the oven and they resembled a hockey puck more than a cookie? You might have overmixed your dough. Remember, you only want to mix the ingredients until just combined. Who would have thought that all these small differences could make such a big difference in the outcome of your cookies? This just goes to show how important the chemistry behind baking is. Now take all of this knowledge you have learned and go nuts, or leave them out, your call. Thank you for watching this podcast episode about chocolate chip cookies. I hope you learned something and are now able to tell everyone that you are one smart cookie. Thank you to Dr. C for letting me guest speak on this podcast, and you can contact us at allthisscience.com if you'd like. Thanks again!